and I will answer it at the end of the class. I also have some questions for you to practice what we've learned, and you can write your answers in the comments section as well. So, English tenses, let's get started. Why have I chosen this topic? Because many students ask, I don't know when to use the past perfect, the present simple, the present continuous. How do I decide which tense to use? Today we're going to review all of the tenses in the past, present, and future, so hopefully this will clear up some of your doubts, and if you still have a question, please write it in the comment section. First, let's look at some fun facts about the English language. First, the most common letter in the English language is the letter E. More words begin with the letter S than with any other letter in the English language. Did you know that the word alphabet comes from two Greek letters, alpha and beta, the first two letters of the Greek alphabet put together? And did you know that the longest word in English without vowels is the word rhythm? Have you heard this word before? Okay. Now let's talk about tenses. We're going to start with the present tense. Okay, let's start with the most basic, the present simple. When and why do we use the present simple? To talk about established facts, habitual actions, and routines, something you do on a regular basis. For example, I study English every Friday afternoon. Okay, now let's look at the present continuous. This is something that is ongoing, happening as we speak. So an ongoing action in the present. How do we form it? We form it using the verb to be. So I am, so am or are, plus ing. For example, I am learning English tenses right now. So this is an ongoing action in the present. The present perfect, okay? We use the present perfect to talk about something we have done several times in the past and continue to do in the present. We form the present perfect with the verb to have, so have or has, plus the participle, okay? This is the ending, the participle. For example, I have read over 25 books this year. So the verb to read in participle form is read. The spelling is the same, but the pronunciation is different. So we have to have, I have, plus the participle read. Okay, now let's look at the present perfect continuous. Okay, this is used for actions that started in the past and continue in the present. So we form this using to have, so have or has, depending on the subject, plus been, plus the verb with ing. For example, I have been living in London for 5 years. So have been plus the verb to live, we add ing. I have been living. And then we specify the amount of time. I have been living in London for 5 years. Now that we've looked at the present tenses, let's move on to the past. First, we'll start with the basics. Again, the past simple. We use the past simple to talk about completed actions in the past. We form the past simple by adding ed if it's a regular verb, and if it's irregular, you have to just memorize them. So there are a lot of irregular verbs. I recommend making note cards, reviewing them, trying to memorize them in groups. That's the best way to remember irregular verbs. Otherwise, if it's regular, you add ed. Let's look at an example. I went to the shop yesterday and bought half a dozen cupcakes. So the verb to go and to buy, they are both irregular. So the past simple of to go is went, and the past simple of to buy is bought. So I went to the shop and bought half a dozen cupcakes. Completed action. Okay, now the past continuous. This is talking about interrupted actions in the past. So an ongoing action in the past that was interrupted by another action. We form the past continuous with the verb to be in the past simple, so was or were, plus the verb with ing. For example, I was taking a shower when the phone rang. So the interrupted action is taking a shower. This is in the past continuous, and the action that interrupts is in the past simple. So when the phone rang, which is a completed action. Okay, now the past perfect. This is something that occurred before another action in the past. We use the past perfect, or we form the past perfect with the verb to have in the past. So had plus the participle. For example, the movie had already started when we arrived. So two different actions, times in the past. Had started is the past perfect, and arrived is the past simple. So one event occurred before the other. Okay, now our last tense in the past perfect continuous. This is something that started in the past and continued up until another time in the past. So it's completed, but it was ongoing in the past. For example, we'd been dating, or we had been dating for a year when we got engaged. So the dating is something that was ongoing in the past. Okay, now it's time to look at the future. Okay, so the future simple can be formed two ways, with will or with going to. First, let's look at will. Okay, so we use will to talk about spontaneous decisions. So we form the future simple with will plus the infinitive. For example, I will call you back later. If someone calls you, you say, I will call you back later. It's a spontaneous decision. Okay, the other future simple with going to, we form with going to plus the infinitive, and we use this form to talk about plans and intentions, things that we know we're going to do in the future. For example, I'm going to wash all the dishes before I go to bed. Okay, now let's look at the future continuous. So an ongoing action in the future, something we will be doing at a specific time in the future. We form this with will plus be and the verb plus ing. For example, this time next week, I will be on vacation, or I'll be on vacation is the contraction form. It's important to specify the time. So here we say this time next week, so we know that it's a time in the future. Okay, now the future perfect. These are actions that are completed by a specific time in the future. So it's finished, but we know when it will be finished in the future. We form the future perfect with will, have, plus the participle. For example, by December, I will have finished my thesis. Here again, we use the time, by December. We put the date, so it specifies that this is a specific time in the future. And with the verb write, the participle is written. Okay, last one. We're almost finished with the tenses. Our last tense is the future perfect continuous. So this is a longer action interrupted by a shorter action in the future. We form the future perfect continuous with will, have been, and the verb plus ing. For example, I will have been studying English for 1 week this summer. Okay? So I'll or I will have been, and we add ing to studying. Okay. I know this was a lot, but let's see what you remember. Now we're going to practice, and you can write your answers in the comment section. Number 1.